I work at McDonald's. We have some odd rules to follow. I'll have a number 4 meal with extra cheese, 2 Big Macs, a large fry, 3 apple pies, and a shamrock shake, Stan declared, his voice echoing through the late-night quiet of the diner. As he handed over a crumpled wad of bills, his total rang up to $46.50. "Here's your change," I said, passing the coins back to him. "I'll call out your number when it's ready." Stan nodded, his hefty frame swaying slightly as he moved to find a seat. Gary and I turned to the task of preparing the large order. As I scooped fries into the brightly colored boxes, I couldn't help but whisper to Gary, "Does he have a family waiting at home or something?" Gary paused, his eyes following Stan's slow trundle to his table before replying, "Blair, look at him. Do you really think he's got a wife and kids waiting? Stan's a regular here. You'll see him pretty often if you're on the night shift." I grimaced as I poured the shake, muttering under my breath about my luck. Gary chuckled, a hint of empathy in his voice. "Honestly, Stan's the least of your worries. This job can throw much worse at you." We finished preparing the food in a heavy silence that filled the space with the sound of sizzling and packaging. "Stan, your order's up!" Gary called out with a forced cheerfulness. The man moved with surprising quickness, his bulk seemingly buoyed by the anticipation of his meal. He grabbed the trays, laden with greasy food, and retreated to his corner sanctuary. I watched, half in horror, half in fascination, as he devoured his meal with a speed that defied belief. Just as I was about to head to the back to sweep, a shrill alarm cut through the air. Gary pulled out his phone, his expression transforming with annoyance. "Sorry, need to take this," he muttered before disappearing into the kitchen. Moments later, he returned, pale and shaken. "That was my Aunt Norma. There's been a car accident. My mom's in critical condition," he stammered, the words tumbling out in a haunted whisper. Gary's eyes glazed over as he processed the news, his body rigid with shock. My heart sank for him. "Gary, I'm so sorry. Do you need me to call someone for you?" He blinked away the tears forming in his eyes, quickly wiping them with the back of his hand. "No, I'll be fine," he insisted, though his voice broke. "But seriously, Gary, what are you still doing here?" I asked, my tone laced with concern and a hint of urgency. "Go be with your family, dude. I can handle closing up on my own," I insisted, watching as determination set into Gary's expression. He nodded. "You're right. I need to go. Take my key to the restaurant. There's a list of rules in Dave's office. Make sure you read them first thing." His tone was firm, emphasizing the seriousness. "You need to follow them to the letter, no matter how odd they seem. Got it?" "Yep, I've got this. Now go," I urged as he placed the small silver key in my hand. He sprinted toward the exit, the door slamming shut behind him. Slipping the drive-through headset under my hat, I made my way to the back to acquaint myself with the night shift's peculiar rules. Pushing open Dave's office door was like moving a boulder, unreasonably heavy. The office was cluttered, but my eyes were drawn to a life-size portrait of Dave grinning pompously from the wall. "Really, Dave? Even I'm not that self-absorbed," I muttered to myself, shaking my head as I turned to the bulletin board peppered with notices. The rules were pinned there clear as day. I quickly scanned through them. Rule 1, a 7-minute grace period is allowed, no exceptions. Rule 2, if a hooded figure knocks at the drive-thru, do not engage. Stay out of sight and it will move on. Rule 3, if Stan complains about missing pickles, placate him with a complimentary chocolate shake. If he refuses, barricade yourself in the office and call Dave. Rule 4, no external food or drink permitted. Rule 5, should a blood-like substance seep from under the grill, mop continuously until it ceases. It's not blood. Rule 6, an old woman in a shawl will enter at 10 minutes past 1. Do not stare at her. She won't leave unless you inquire about Tony. Rule 7, ignore any small child claiming to have lost his mother. He has sinister motives. Rule 8, adherence to the employee dress code is mandatory. Consult management for specifics. Rule 9, if ever you feel an unnerving sense of being watched while alone, secure yourself in the office until the feeling passes. The list of rules continued, each more bizarre than the last. Rule, the store closes at 2 a.m. Before you clock out, place 2 packages of raw burgers on the stove. Always leave the restaurant by 2:37 a.m. The Hamburglar doesn't like company. Failure to adhere to these rules will result in immediate termination, it read. Dave's phone number was hastily scribbled at the bottom, a lifeline thrown in the midst of madness. Glancing over the rules, I wondered if this was some sort of cruel initiation prank, for the new guy. Could Gary be in on it? Despite my doubts, I decided to stick it out and see for myself, making my way back to the counter. As I approached, Stan abruptly stood up and walked over with an odd determination. Can I help you with something? I asked, trying to mask my confusion. Yeah, you forgot my pickles, he grumbled. Internally, I rolled my eyes. The fun hadn't taken long to start after Gary's departure. I started to defend my coworker's careful preparation, but remembered Rule 3 midway. I'm sorry. I can offer you a free shake for the inconvenience, I suggested, hoping to defuse the situation. Stan's response was a vehement shake of his head, his jowls trembling. No, I don't want any more food. There's another way you could make it up to me, though, he said, a malicious grin spreading across his face. A chill of fear ran through me, prompting a burst of adrenaline. I'm 16, sir, I stammered, misunderstanding his intent. That's not what I meant, you dumb broad. I want a refund. What? No, you already ate all of it, I retorted, but he persisted. Fine. If you won't give me my money back, I'll have to take it from you. With that, he began to advance, his massive form lumbering towards the counter. Panic took over, and I dashed towards the back, praying he wouldn't catch up. As I struggled with the heavy office door, I risked a glance back to see Stan barreling towards me, knocking products off the shelves in his wake. My heart pounded painfully against my ribs as I barely managed to slip through the office door and slam it shut just as he reached it. The door thudded ominously as Stan pounded on it with his fists, his shouts filled with rage and obscenities echoing through the metal. Trapped in Dave's office, I pressed my back against the door, hoping the sturdy frame would hold against the assault. I'll get you, you little wimp. You can't stay in there forever, Stan bellowed, his threats echoing against the sturdy door. He was right. I couldn't hide out here indefinitely. Frantically, I tore the yellowed piece of paper with Dave's number from the board and dialed, each ring stretching into what felt like eternity before he finally answered. Hello? This better be good. I value my beauty sleep. Dave, it's Stan. The free shake didn't work. I'm trapped in the office, I explained in a rush, my voice edged with panic. Dave sighed heavily. All right, put me on speaker and hold your phone up to the door so he can hear me. I complied, pressing my trembling hands against my cracked iPhone 7 and positioning it near the vibrating door. Stan, can you hear me? It's Dave, he called out, and the room fell into a sudden, eerie silence. Oh yeah, what's up, Davey? Stan's tone shifted, a mix of curiosity and respect now evident. Stan, are you harassing one of my employees again? I don't need to get Mrs. Barrett on the phone, do I? Dave's voice was stern. No, please, I'll behave, I swear, just don't call her, Stan pleaded, his voice quivering with fear. I don't know, that's what you said last time, Dave countered skeptically. I promise I'll never bother her again. Come on, Davey, show a little compassion. After a brief pause, Dave responded, all right, but you need to go home now, and you owe Mrs. Blake an apology for scaring her. Blair, I corrected, face palming at the mix-up. Right, apologize to Blair, and I'll let you off the hook this time. Oh, thank you. Sorry, Blair, Blaze. So, can I still take you up on that free shake? Stan tried to salvage some part of his original demand. No, Stan, no free shake tonight. I need you to leave, Dave said with finality. Stan trudged angrily through the kitchen and out the front door. I only allowed myself to breathe again once I heard the door slam shut behind him. Thanks, Dave, I said, a grateful exhale coloring my word. Anytime, kid. In my experience, threatening to call his mother works wonders with overgrown man babies, Dave chuckled, a hint of amusement in his tone. I'm heading back to bed now. Good luck tonight. With that, he hung up abruptly. I sat for a moment longer, my breathing slowly steadying the racing heartbeat. Finally regaining my composure, I stood and trudged into the kitchen. Resigned, I began the tedious task of cleaning up the chaos of boxes and condiments that Stan had left in his wake. I had just positioned the final ketchup bottle back in its place when, from the corner of my eye, I noticed a figure standing at the drive-thru window. My body froze, muscles tensing as I stared at the shadowy form. Its eyes, glowing a fierce yellow, seemed to pierce through the darkness, and with a deliberate slow motion, it raised a gloved fist, tapping lightly against the thin glass pane. The soft knock momentarily snapped me out of my trance. Remembering Rule 2, I sprinted to the counter and crouched behind it, pulling my knees tight to my chest. The initially gentle tapping intensified, growing louder and more urgent. The window vibrated under the force of the knocks, escalating into a frantic pounding. I shut my eyes tight, overwhelmed by fear that the fragile glass wouldn't withstand the assault. The noise hammered at my senses like thunderclaps in a storm, growing into an unbearable crescendo of pounding. Just when I thought I might be driven mad by the relentless barrage, It ceased abruptly. The silence that followed was eerie, almost more terrifying. Cautiously, I lifted my gaze, half expecting to see the figure still there, but it had vanished as if it had never been. Slowly, I stood up, my legs shaky as I regained my composure. I dared a glance around the corner toward the drive-thru. Nothing. The glass remained unmarked, eerily pristine. Checking the time on my phone, it read 12:15 a.m. Less than 2 hours until close. Surely I could manage. With a deep breath, I resumed sweeping, grateful for the distraction, however temporary. The monotony was soon interrupted by the arrival of a couple of college students. Their demeanor made it clear they were under the influence, barely managing to pick up and stagger out with their order. One courteously held the door open for someone else, a small old lady wrapped in a shawl, moving with a purposeful stride toward the counter. She entered without a word of thanks, her presence commanding despite her size. Exhaustion clouded my judgment, having pushed me well past my usual hours, and I had completely forgotten the night's earlier instructions, a grave oversight. As she approached, her features obscured by the darkness of her attire, reminiscent of a ninja from the movies, a sense of foreboding washed over me. The woman's presence exuded an unnerving aura that chilled me to the bone, yet the weariness clouding my mind prevented me from fully grasping the threat she posed. "Hello, how can I help you?" I asked, stifling a yawn with my hand. The woman remained motionless, her scowl deepening as her yellow, reptilian eyes seemed to bore into my very soul, accelerating my heartbeat to a frantic pace. "Ma'am, would you like to order something?" I ventured again, receiving no response. Our silent standoff continued, and the longer it lasted, the more I felt an inexplicable drowsiness pull at my consciousness, as if she wielded some hypnotic power over me. Just as I was about to succumb to sleep, I remembered the instructions and muttered, "Where's Tony?" Instantly, it was as though a spell had been broken. The woman disappeared as abruptly as she had appeared. Relieved yet shaken, I hurried to the sink, splashing cold water on my face to banish the lingering fog of sleep. Deciding I needed a stronger wake-up call, I poured myself a large cup of coffee, reasoning that staying alert was preferable to facing another eerie encounter. With the caffeine coursing through my veins, I returned to my chores, trying to shake off the feeling of unease that clung to me. As I disposed of the trash, a creeping sensation of being watched prickled at my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. I scanned the area nervously. The drive-thru was empty. I turned to check the dining area, also deserted. My head spun lightly and panic started to claw its way up my throat. A soft whisper breezed past my ear, barely audible over the humming of the appliances. "Blair!" it called. Heart pounding, I didn't hesitate. I sprinted to the office and slammed the door shut, sealing myself inside. I paced back and forth like a trapped animal, every small sound amplifying my anxiety. The intense feeling of being watched gradually faded, leaving me to ponder my choice of job. Was every shift going to be this fraught with terror? Caught up in these thoughts, I was jolted back to reality by a burst of static from my headset. Annoyed, I ripped it off, only to put it back on when a slurred male voice inquired through the crackle, "Hey, is this place open?" His words slurred, indicating his inebriated state. "Yeah, what do you want to order?" I asked, my tone sharper than intended. "I'll have a filet-o-fish meal," he mumbled. Mustering what little patience I had left, I headed back to the kitchen to prepare his order, all the while questioning my sanity for staying in a job that seemed more like a portal to a paranormal realm than a simple fast food restaurant. Who the hell comes to McDonald's at 1:30 in the morning for a freaking filet-o-fish? I grumbled to myself, slathering the sandwich with an extra helping of tartar sauce more out of spite than necessity. After quickly serving the man, I hoped he'd leave without further incident. "Thanks. Hey, is that a kid at the counter?" he asked just as he was leaving. I turned and saw, to my disbelief, a small child standing alone by the register, a mop of blonde tangles and deep blue eyes watching me intently. Exhaling a weary sigh, I managed a strained smile. "Yeah, I'll take care of him. Have a good night." The thought of a child unattended at this unholy hour weighed heavily on me. As I began to approach the counter, Rule 7 from the bizarre list I had read earlier echoed in my head like a warning siren. I halted mid-stride, reminding myself, "Just ignore him, Blair. It's almost 2. You got this." With a shiver of resolve, I began my closing duties prematurely, hoping to avoid any interaction. However, ignoring the child proved more challenging than I anticipated. His wails, shrill and piercing, began to fill the restaurant, bouncing off the walls and grating on my nerves. When he darted into the kitchen, giving me a clearer view of his small, dirt-smudged frame clad in a faded Pac-Man t-shirt, my heart sank. He couldn't have been older than 6, looking as though he hadn't bathed in days. The boy then started tugging at my shirt, his pleas heartbreaking. "Please help me, lady. I can't find my mommy." He sobbed, his tears leaving wet trails on his dusty cheeks. His small hands gripped my clothes with surprising strength, his desperation palpable. But the night's eerie rules and strange occurrences had worn me down to a nub. Feeling a mix of fear and frustration, I snapped, unable to handle another minute of the nightmare. "Get out! Just screw off and leave me the hell alone." To my astonishment, the boy stopped crying instantly. Straightening up, his eyes flashed a disturbing shade of red and a slow, malicious grin spread across his face. "You made the right choice, you can tell," he growled in a tone far too mature for his age, before turning and walking out the door. Shaken, I muttered to myself, "Weirdo kid," and tried to refocus on cleaning up. I was just about to sigh in relief as the clock neared 2:00 a.m., hopeful for a quiet end to my shift, when my eyes caught something horrifying. A dark red, viscous liquid began oozing from beneath the stove. Great. Just what I needed. Grabbing a mop bucket from the storage closet, I began frantically trying to clean up the mysterious substance. It wasn't supposed to be blood, but the metallic taste that filled my mouth whenever I breathed in too deeply argued otherwise. I gagged, fighting the urge to vomit as the relentless flow of the fluid seemed never ending. On my third bucket full of the sloshing crimson liquid, I finally began to get the upper hand. The mopping was intense. Blisters formed on my hands from the relentless friction against the wooden handle. At last, all the not blood was mopped up and disposed of. I dumped the final bucket down the drain, breathing a sigh of relief and trying my best not to splash myself in the process. "I did it! Take that, bitches, I win!" I exclaimed, my jubilation echoing in the empty kitchen as if I had just crossed the finish line at the Indy 500. My celebration was, however, short-lived. Glancing down at my phone, the time read 2:35 a.m. Panicking, I dashed to the freezer. Grabbing a couple of bags of frozen patties, I tore them open as fast as I could, dumping their contents onto the grill and tossing the empty packaging in the trash. As I turned back, my heart sank. Standing before me was a man with dead black eyes and a small mask covering the upper half of his face. Wisps of red hair peeked out from under a floppy hat, matching his tattered black and white striped uniform and dingy red tie adorned with burger images. He grinned, revealing jagged, rotten teeth that sent a shiver through me. His rough, gravelly voice broke the silence. "Look, I know you're new here, so I'll spare you this time. But if I ever catch you in here this late again, I won't think twice about increasing my calorie intake." His smile twisted with a malevolent hunger that sent a chill down my spine. A gray tongue slithered across his cracked lips as he eyed me like prey. Scowling, he barked, "What are you still doing here? Get out!" Suddenly, my paralysis broke and I sprinted through the dining area, bursting out into the cool night air. The Hamburglar's eerie gaze followed me to the empty parking lot. I locked the door behind me, my heart pounding as I raced to my car, a mix of fear, anger, and confusion overwhelming me. By the time I reached home, anger was winning. Determined for answers and fueled by rage, I returned to McDonald's just 4 hours late, running on 0 sleep and an entire pot of coffee. With determination blazing in my eyes, I stormed through the doors and headed straight for Dave's office. "Yeah, it was great," I muttered sarcastically under my breath, ready to confront whatever madness awaited. Had his car repossessed and everything. "Oh, hey Blit, For the last freaking time, it's Blair, B-L-A-I-R, not Blitzen, not Blaziken, not Blakely. Blair," I corrected sharply, frustration boiling over. Dave, caught off guard, furrowed his brow and his mouth fell slightly agape. "Yeah, Jim, I'll have to get back to you," he mumbled into the phone before ending the call and shoving his phone back into his pocket with visible irritation. "Do you even know who that was? I mean, why the hell do you think you can just storm into my office like this?" "No, you listen to me, Davy boy. I just had the worst night of my life. Every weird thing that could have happened, happened. And you don't care one bit. I see you've become acquainted with our more troublesome clientele." I let the anger and disbelief color my words, fed up with the absurdity of the night. "Yeah, I have, and I'm not dealing with that crap again. I quit," I declared, my voice sharp as I slapped my hat down on his polished cedarwood desk, making my intentions clear before turning to leave. "Wait, $25 an hour," Dave called out just as I reached the door. His words stopped me in my tracks, and I turned around, reluctantly facing him. A sly, toothy grin spread across his greasy face, thinking he had me cornered. I weighed the offer for a moment. It was nearly double my current wage, a sum that could significantly shorten the time it would take to pay for my college education. Temptation mingled with my resolve, leading me to counter. 27 an hour, and you've got a deal. You drive a hard bargain, Mrs. Blair. I accept, he conceded, extending his hand towards me. I shook it begrudgingly, cringing as his sweaty palm enveloped mine. I'm glad you were able to see reason. Welcome to the night crew, he said, sealing the new agreement as I mentally prepared myself for whatever bizarre nights lay ahead in my newfound role.